Hello lovely people, my name is Emma and today I have an audiobook haul for you. Now I've never done an audiobook haul specifically on my channel before, but Audible, which is the audiobook provider that I personally use, had a huge sale semi-recently where basically they were doing daily deals of like hundreds of books that were only going to be like £2 or £3, and then they changed what those books were every day for a week. So I kind of went on a little bit of a binge and bought quite a few, so I figured they kind of deserved their own video. So I don't even know how many I have to talk about today. We're going to jump in. This is going to be a nightmare to edit. It's going to be so many things flashing up here. Fingers crossed I remember to put everything in. A few of these as well might not have been in that sale, but I like returned a few titles recently and had a few credits spare, so I went and bought a couple of things just before this, so I'm just going to lump them all into one. And some of these you might know already because I have them physically on my shelves, or indeed I've already listened to them and they featured in a wrap-up or something like that. So the first one I picked up was The First Men in the Moon by H.G. Wells. I adore H.G. Wells. It's now quite well known on my channel. I've read some of his big four titles recently, but the guy is very prolific and has a huge collection of books, so this is just the next one that I want to move on to. As the title suggests, it is about the first men who go to the moon, and this will have been pre the actual space race, so I think it's going to be really interesting to see what he does with that. He's such a pioneer of sci-fi. Then I have Invisible Women, Exposing the Data Bias in Our World by Caroline Criado Perez. This is a non-fiction book looking at the way our world is set up and the way it's kind of been designed and how that has an inherent bias towards women. This is a book that I've been eyeing up in bookstores quite a few times recently, and when I saw it on Audible I figured I'd give it a go. I might even try and get around to it in non-fiction November. I do have a few non-fiction titles on here, and as you'll know if you saw my wrap-up recently, I've been really vibing off of audiobooks recently, so I think there might be a higher percentage of them again still. Then I picked up the entire Sherlock Holmes collection by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, which is narrated by Stephen Fry. It's absolutely amazing. I listened to The Sign of Four last month. So much fun, so good, and whilst I do have some more books of his on my shelf, I might be dabbling with the audiobooks in the future. Don't feel like I need to tell you who Sherlock Holmes is. You know. Then I have Philip Pullman's The Ruby and the Smoke. This is book one of a quartet that he wrote quite a few years ago now. In theory, I read them when I was a kid because I'm super into Philip Pullman. His Dark Materials is one of my all-time favourite series, and especially was when I was younger. And I think I read these, but I don't actually remember much about them. I know my dad read them at the same time as well, and he really enjoyed them. And I think I was in one of those weird mindsets where, like, as a kid, because it wasn't Lyra and the world of His Dark Materials, I was just like not interested and read them more because Dad said I should. So I'd really like to go back and listen to them and really kind of explore the story again, because I'm really not impressed with Philip Pullman at the moment. I've started the Book of Dust, book 2, not enjoying it, have put it down for a bit, hated book 1, don't like what he's done recently, so hopefully his old stuff will be okay. Then I have 4321 by Paul Auster? I'm not too sure, but basically this is like a kind of freaky multiverse timeline fiction where it's about a guy who has like 4 different timelines going on at once. Apparently it's supposed to be incredible, a masterpiece. It's ridiculously long. Yeah, it's 4 Fergusons made of the same genetic material who go along to lead 4 parallel and entirely different lives. It's 36 hours long, which is huge, so God knows when I'm going to get to it, but as we know on my channel, I'm really keen on multiverse timeline stories. I have an entire video dedicated to 4 or 5 that I read, so I'll link that down below if I remember. And yeah, I'm kind of excited by this one. This is one that I've been eyeing up, but then it seems quite long, but maybe it's going to be good, but it was only £2, so screw it, we'll try. Then on a similar kind of one, a lot of these are like, oh, it was only £2 or £3, I'll give it a go. We have A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson. The only Bill Bryson I've ever read is Mother Tongue, but he is fairly well known in the non-fiction writing world. He is kind of fairly iconic, and I really enjoyed Mother Tongue, so I think I'm going to also enjoy A Short History of Nearly Everything. I've been meaning to get to another Bill Bryson at some point, so this makes sense. Then I have Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier. I read Rebecca early on this year and really enjoyed it. I find her writing so atmospheric, and I don't know much about Jamaica Inn. I think it has a vague reference to pirates. I could be wrong, that could be one of our other ones, but I did want to try another Daphne du Maurier at some point soon, so I figured I might as well go for it. There's a few classics in here, to be honest. Again, it's a lot of like collecting classics that I think I'll get round to at some point because they're really cheap, so this is awesome. So one of them is A Passage to India by E.M. Forster. I've never read an E.M. Forster. I don't think A Passage to India is his best. I've heard it can be a bit product of its time in places, but it's quite short. It's only like 11 hours, and I really like the narrator's voice, so I think I'll give it a bit of a go. And then I have Thérèse Raquin, I probably butchered that, by Émile Zola. This is narrated by Kate Winslet, and again is like a classic. Sorry, I have my phone up because I'm obviously reading off on it. So it's supposed to be the story of a young woman forced into an unhappy marriage to her dull, sickly cousin and smothered by her overbearing aunt, and then she ends up having a torrid affair. It's set in 19th century France, so I thought it'd be interesting to read a classic that isn't just a British classic, because that's definitely been the bias so far in my reading, just from like buying the Penguin English Library classics. So it'd be nice to branch out. It's quite short, only 7 hours. Kate Winslet's a babe. We love her voice. We're on to a winner. I've got The Lost World by Arthur Conan Doyle. I love Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's writing. The Sherlock Holmes books are amazing. I've been kind of binge reading them semi-recently, like over the past few months, so I thought it'd be good fun to read The Lost World. And we all know on this channel, I'm a sucker for dinosaurs. If a book has a dino in it, I'm gonna read it. I have them permanently on my body, mate. Like, we love dinosaurs. Do you like my iguanodon? He's not done, like, clearly. Look at him, he looks a bit derpy now because he's not been shaded. This is my new iguanodon. He says hey. Continuing on, a not classic, a modern-ish fiction is The Various Haunts of Men by Susan Hill. And again, Susan Hill featured on a video I did at the beginning of the year, which was like authors I want to revisit, and I was going to do The Small Hand but of hers, which it doesn't appeal, whereas this one seems very spooky and freaky and terrifying, and I've not really done a horror book in audiobook form, and I honestly don't know how it's going to go, so I'm really excited about that one. Then we have another non-fiction. This is Black Diamonds, The Rise and Fall of an English Dynasty, and this is specifically about the Fitzwilliam family, who were British aristocracy. Doesn't say when. The reason why I wanted to pick this one up was, again, obviously one, it was in a very cheap deal, but I live in Cambridge and there are a bunch of buildings which are called after the Fitzwilliams, including Fitzwilliam College, Fitzwilliam Museum. The Fitzwilliams have put their mark on Cambridge as a city, as I'm sure they have in many places, but as soon as I saw it and I recognised the name, I was like, oh, that'd be really cool to find out why there is an entire college named after them, presumably because they donated a ton of money, so it'd be interesting to give that a bit of a go. I've got Emma by Jane Austen. This is another one that I have on my shelf, and I figure if I have it in audiobook form I might get round to it sooner. I really enjoy Austen. I listened to Persuasion at the beginning of the year, and I read Northanger Abbey at the very beginning of the year, like my first read I think of the year, so really enjoy both of those. I've got Homage to Catalonia by George Orwell. This is a non-fiction about its time in the Spanish War. I've also got The Road to Wigan Pier, which I've had for a while. It's featured in a few TBRs. Hopefully going to get to for non-fiction November, but it's quite nice to just chuck another one in there. I really like George Orwell's writing, and I'm interested by his non-fiction. I've got The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell. Laura Purcell wrote The Corset, which I read I think last month and absolutely loved. It was a historical fiction thriller, absolutely incredible, so cool, so much fun. So The Silent Companions is just another one of hers, and honestly I don't care what the storyline is, like I straight up do not care. Give me some more Laura Purcell. She's got a new one coming out called Bone China, I think, and I'm really tempted by it, but I'm going to give this one a go first before I move on, because I have this thing with authors where quite often I like one of their books and then really dislike a lot of their other books, and I'm very hesitant to call people my favourite authors, so I don't want to go and commit to her new one in hardback until I've tried these others. I think I listened to The Corset in audiobook. Yeah, I did, and I really enjoyed it in that format, so hopefully again it will suit. I've got The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. I don't have this on my shelf, I've got The Moonstone instead, but it's a fairly iconic classic and I do want to get round to it fairly soon. I've heard it can be a bit long, and actually it's 24 hours long, but I do find that lengthy, slightly dragging in places classics I just do better with in audiobook form, so why not lean into that? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Again, on the note of George Orwell previously, I have Burmese Days. This is his first novel, apparently, and it's based on his own experiences as a police officer in Burma. I didn't actually look this up before I bought it. Literally, I was just going on binge like, oh, I know that author. Bye. So this is exciting. I might get to this one soon. This looks very cool. We've got The Tiger in the Well by Philip Pullman, which I think is book 3 of the series. So I've definitely got book 1. And then book 3, and I don't know what happened to book 2 and book 4, if they were ever in the deal or not, so fingers crossed I like book 1 and then get round to book 2, and then at some point we'll listen to book 3. But yeah, so I figured, again, £2, why not? I got The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. Cool, I bought that too. Who knew? I did not realise that. So now I've got both of them. I do have that on my shelf. It's also supposed to be quite a similar like thriller, one of the first kind of thrillers out there. So that looks really exciting. I have The Help by Catherine Stockett, which I think most people do know what this is because it was made into a very big movie a few years ago with Emma Stone and a bunch of other amazing human beings in it. And it's basically looking at segregation in America and with black people being like maids and that whole story. So that looks really, really good and really interesting. And it's been one of these ones that's like on my radar. Do I want to read it? Do I not? I'll go, and it's only £2. I've got The Long Goodbye by Raymond Chandler. I've been meaning to get around to another Raymond Chandler for now literally a year. It is going to have been a year in November that I read my first Raymond Chandler, my only Raymond Chandler, and I've been meaning to read another one. I enjoyed the crime noir vibe of it so much. It was so cool. I really liked The Big Sleep, and I have like 3 more on my shelves and I haven't been getting to them, and I think I have The Long Goodbye on my shelves. So I try to like pick up audiobooks of books I already own, so I'm not duplicating up my TBR too much. She says with a list of a ton of books that she doesn't actually know what she's bought. Oops. But I'm really keen for this one. A super spur of the moment, not 100% certain why I bought it. This was definitely an impulse buy, is Scary Monsters and Super Creeps in Search of the World's Most Hideous Monsters. This is by Dom Jolly, and is basically, he's a cryptozoologist, and those are the people who believe in things like Yeti and the Loch Ness Monster and go off and search for them. I don't really follow like conspiracy theories or crazy stories like Yeti and Nessie. It's not a world that I've ever delved into, but this looks quite amusing. He heads to 6 completely different destinations to investigate local monster sightings. It's non-fiction November. This sounds absurd. It's only £2. I figured it would be a bit of a giggle. And then I bought Elephant Moon by Helen Johns. And this is a fiction story that is about the Second World War, and specifically the Japanese Imperial Army entering Burma. Apparently it's based on a true story. Again, it was a little bit of a spur of the moment. I like Second World War fiction. A lot of what I've read is set in the Blitz and in the UK. And again, just trying to sort of expand these things out and read some stuff from some other areas which are linked to stuff that I enjoy. So I don't know anything really about it. I've never heard about it before, but I figured it'd be a giggle. And the last one I've got is The Trauma Cleaner by Sarah Chronostein. This is about a woman called Sandra who she's a trauma cleaner, which means that it's a non-fiction. She goes into various sites where there's been a trauma of some sort, whether it be a death or a murder or like hoarders or ODs or, you know, some of the sad and more gruesome sides of the world, and then they need like a really serious industrial major clean. But Sandra's also had a fairly long and interesting life herself. She's transgender, and it's about her story. She went through a lot of abuse as a child, and it's kind of a marrying of the two together. Like I said, I've started it. I'm about 4 hours in, about halfway through. I'm not currently massively enjoying it, but I will save my thoughts as to exactly why once I've finished it, because I think I've got a lot of different conflicting emotions about it right now, and trying to tease out exactly what isn't resonating with me is a little bit tricky. So those are all the books that I bought in audiobook form in my last big giant haul from Audible. Do you like audiobooks? What do you listen to? What provider do you use? I use Audible. I know Amazon's a big bad and all that jazz, but just for me, they work really well, and I've no problem with their selection, and I've no problem with the credit system as well. I did also listen to them on I can't remember the app, but basically it was like a library app, but then the app kept glitching and not saving my place in the audiobooks, so I've not used it since. So I very much just rely on Audible and keep it all in one place. So that's it from me. Which one do you think I should like get to first as well? Do you have any strong opinions about any of them in there? It's like a really, really weird disparate mix, but like I said, it was a lot of spur of the moment, fuck it, let's try that, and we'll just see. And sometimes that's just fun to like bulk out your TBR, find a bunch of random new titles, and occasionally there can be like absolute gems that you never would have picked up normally, other than it being super cheap, and they become firm favourites. So I'm hoping a bunch of them are hidden in that list. So have a wonderful reading week, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye.